All right, we're back with more action here at VGVN3 with Firebat versus Xixo. The first time we'll see Xixo play today. And Xixo this time is an invite player and not a person coming through the open bracket. He qualified twice for the previous two tournaments, and I think he's the only player who's been in all three tournaments so far. So Vincent Calento and Hype will have 2 appearances each. But everyone else will be their first time. So Xixo is kind of the old guard here. He's the geezer, so to speak, PV. And he's the one where he's yet to break out of the group stages, and he's come so close every single time. He's been in 3rd place both times.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely happy to see him getting an invite here.
Yeah, I think we're going to go to the match ceremonies, by the way, and show you guys the bands real quick. We want to remind you also about the opportunity to win the Zeus Mini Cyber Power PC in the link. Just type giveaway in the chat, and you can get all the info about how to sign up for the newsletter and find out more about the Video Game Voters Network and what they're all about. All their activism to make sure that video games are properly represented in the United States and the Supreme Court. So check out the link in the Twitch chat, or Twitch chat and the Twitch profile as well. Excuse me. All right, so it looks like we have Hunter bans on both sides. Firebat, of course, we saw him earlier banning Hunter, but Xixo this time will respect the Hunter a little bit more. As much as his Shaman was good against Hunter in the open bracket, maybe Xixo comes in with a different game plan, or maybe he wanted to ban another class and felt like, well, you know, maybe his class he didn't bring it, and since he didn't bring the class I was planning to ban, I'd ban Hunter anyways, just by sheer power level.
Yeah, definitely surprised at the Hunter ban here. Because, you know, his other 2 decks are Druid and Miracle Rogue, which they don't necessarily have to fear Hunter, even if he loses with his Shaman. But Handlock, on the other hand, is good against both those decks. So if the Shaman deck goes, I'm not sure how Xixo is going to be feeling against Firebat's Handlock deck.
Right, it could backfire, but at this point, I'm willing to trust Xixo because it feels like his knowledge of Hearthstone has just grown the more I see him. Just as a small little side story, I met Xixo when he was just first learning how to play Hearthstone. He lives actually like 10-15 minutes away from me. He lives in Berlin, I believe, or close to Berlin, that is. And I've seen him at the Meltdowns. I've seen him come to Fight Night, and every time I meet him, his knowledge of Hearthstone, his experience has grown leaps and bounds, and it seems like he's finally evolved into a much stronger player than he was months ago when we were just filming those seasons. And now he's bringing his own Shaman deck, which seems to be one of the most copied lists, short of the Seed Giant version that you see sometimes forming ladder, and for good reason. It's been very solid, it's very versatile, and it's capable of taking wins off of any deck. Even the Miracle Rogue, as much as you feel like it's a good matchup for the Rogue player, and Firebat made a great choice, you can't underestimate what this Shaman deck can do with some of the burst.
Yeah, definitely. And I like that Xixo is just not afraid to challenge, you know, conventions. Because everyone's been saying, since I started playing Hearthstone, people have been telling me, oh, Shaman is not that great because Hunter beats it. And it just got ingrained into my mind that Shaman had a bad matchup against Hunter, and I assume that's the same for a lot of people. But then Xixo was like, no, I actually think I have a good matchup. So he just played that, and he proved that he was right. And other people have been copying him, and suddenly, you know, the convention is, you start thinking, maybe what I thought is not right anymore. Maybe this guy's right. So I wonder what else he's right about. And very, very interesting player to watch because he's not afraid to challenge things. I like that.
I think so too. Game number 1's about to begin, and Firebat wants to rebound immediately. He's down 0-1 in the groups. Not over yet, though. Has to kind of take down Xixo in order to advance. And thankfully this time we have Firebat throughout the entire series, as the VODs were able to kind of recover. And a pretty decent start for Firebat. He's got some good cards going on in his opening mulligans. He's got Auctioneer. He's on the coin. He gets an extra card. And so by all means, it seems like sunny weather ahead for our Copenhagen Wolves player. Excuse me. Trying to remember my own words here.
Not a great hand for Xixo, but, you know, still could just has 2 Flame Tokenos to make use of that hero power. So, still go well for him.
Alright. Firebat has stuff to do, which is often the most important thing against Shaman and a lot of other decks. That way you're not just allowing them to build the board. In fact, Firebat's going to take a more aggressive stance uses SI7 agent to deny the ability to kind of build any semblance of board presence for their shaman. I like it.
Yeah, and it's gonna kill. Ooh, that's huge.
Wow.
Yeah, it's gonna kill this totem and every single totem thereafter because you can just keep attacking it. Whereas if he just doesn't play it, you know, Xixo would have 2 totems next turn, then 3 totems, and then those defender focuses and flame totems would start to get powerful.
An insta call of Hex. Oh man, and Xixo recognizes that, well, there's a little bit of damage still being put my way, but at least it's not a 4 damage Cold Blood. And now like Firebat's trying to obviously make his opponent pay for hexing his minion. And as a result, neither players are getting optimal value on their cards. This is kind of amusing situations where both players are trying to make it uncomfortable and optimize value, and yet we have like this awkward situation where a 2/1 hexed frog is adding pressure on the shaman. What is going on here?
Yeah, I guess he just wants to kill those totems very badly, and he knows 2/1 is enough to hit a totem every turn, and if it's the 1/1 totem, he can just kill with the dagger from the hero power. So that would explain why he doesn't particularly care that it's not +4, since he's just going to use it to attack a no 2 every turn anyway. But that backfires now when he fights with a 2/4.
Yeah. Well, at least he didn't hex the already hexed frog to make it a 0/1 again. That would have been very humorous if that ever became the scenario. I mean, it makes sense, granted that Xixo didn't want to play Feral Spirits to get challenged. SI7 would have killed whatever totem he had. And with double Flametongue Totem in hand, he prioritized having the board presence. But Miracle Rogues has the cards to continue to put out these 3/3 minions, 2/4 minions, ways to harass and effectively pick apart Xixo's board every single turn. And he's going to use his second hex. I mean, this is how much he values his Flametongue Totem and Feral Spirits value.
Yeah, definitely very, very interesting play. And he did it very quickly, so it's probably something, at least the first time, he had already thought through. Most people would just pause and be appalled at, without even consider using hacks on his opponent's 3/3 at that point. He just did it immediately. Didn't even, flinch.
Okay, now what's important is Xixo also picked up Lotheb, a card that can deny the Auctioneer from going off. And that allows him a little bit of wiggle room, so that way he used both of his hexes, so he can't answer the Auctioneer directly, but now he actually has a minion to shut down a turn and potentially be able to set up a strong board. So the Lotheb to come out, start trading and being a little bit effective, and put some pressure back. This is what Xixo's been looking for, but at the same time, he wasn't happy that a 5/5 minion was able to stick.
Yeah, generally you want to wait for them to play Auctioneer, then you can play Lotheb in neither their turn, but we're approaching the point where Firebat can just play Auctioneer and a lot of spells in the same turn, so you kind of have to preemptively play the Lotheb there, and especially considering your alternatives aren't great.
Okay, well, Firebat has a handful of spells in Gadsand Auctioneer. And he doesn't have Blade Flare. Like, he doesn't have cards that are super duper effective against what Shaman has yet. Eviscerate to kind of take out this totem, plus allow his Lotheb to push through, feels...
Oh, he has a deadly poison,
yeah.
So he could just have attacked it. But now he gets to attack the totem as well.
It feels bad, but it gets the job done.
Yeah, it's what he had to do. Definitely not what he wanted to do, but it was his only possible thing. Did you just jam all here there? Attack for 6? It's not impressive? Or?
I think so. I'm trying to think, because the alternative play is obviously to load up the board and play Manatide Totem and basically try to win, but like, you don't have forever against the Miracle Rogue. And the Alec here is uncontested. Unfortunately, I think it can just die easily. Oh, and Sap has been drawn too. That's pretty unfortunate for Xixo.
Yeah, no, as far as, big minions to get Sap, that's one of the ones you care the least about because he does have charge, so...
He doesn't have to Sap it anymore. He can just kill it.
Yeah.
Oh, no. In fact, he's got, like, the more he draws, the worse it gets for Xixo because he's got so many answers. And this has been 5 cards already this turn, with potential for more, and that is bad news because Alec here is one of the finishers that Shaman relies on.
Yeah, at least he can Earthshock that guy, so it'll only be a 4/3 no abilities. I guess he can finish it off with the Fire Elemental now.
Yeah, put another threat. And 2 eviscerates have been used, so you know a spell power eviscerate can effectively one-shot this fire elemental. Xixo is just, again, applying as much pressure as possible and trying to make Miracle's life uncomfortable. But there is Gadget number 2, and this allows Firebat to start pushing through once again. And the circus continues.
Yeah, and he knows Xixo is out of access, so by sapping the fire elemental, he does give him the chance to, you know, basically just do the same thing again. Just hit it with a spell and then finish her off with the fire elemental. Ooh, he drew the conceal, but he doesn't have mana to cast it. That's unfortunate.
Alright, well, Xixo can still remove its Gadget Sand number 2, its Flame Tongue Totem.
Yeah. Which is better than just playing Doomhammer and taking 8 damage. Ooh, Defender Fire doesn't start playing that thing.
Makes sense too.
Yeah, I guess he's just worried he might die next turn. You know, he doesn't know. Firebat actually doesn't have Shadow Step or Leroy. So, you know, he can do a whole total of 5 damage this turn if he casts all his spells. But Xixo might be thinking,
this is going to be painful. A backstab and Fan of Knives is going to clear the board. Are you kidding me? That's so crazy how much this Miracle Rogue deck's been able to weather the storm and still not even use Blade Flurry. Xixo, he's just like, is this for real? Am I dreaming?
Yeah, now he's, you know, finally out of ways to clear the board. He could play the Doomhammer and attack the Azure Drake twice, but that's a lot of damage he takes.
No, that play is exclusively reserved for Reynad. He did that one time and everyone was like, whoa, that's way too much damage. And that was after like a really epic game in the Well Played Cup.
Yeah, now Firebat, he could just, he doesn't even have to Deadly Poison anymore. I was going to say you could just Armor Deadly Poison and Blade Fury everything away. But by drawing Azure Drake, just clears it all if it's for 1. So I guess by drawing the Van Cleef, never mind.
Oh, get that extra damage in, why not?
I wonder if it might have been better to just play a big Van Cleef and conceal it.
Well, either way, the consequence is about the same. It's very difficult to come back from this position.
Yeah, at this point, you know, you just don't care much what you do. You know you're gonna win anyway, so you don't worry much. Yeah. Xixo also knows.
Alright. Well, Xixo's just kind of... He actually has the Resident Sleeper face right now on him. But he's just going to kind of pass this as soon as he just sees Lyria's confirmation. And Miracle is favored against Shaman because of those ability to draw and get those clears that you just witnessed. And it's just difficult to kind of climb back from that position whatsoever. Meanwhile, we'll see Xixo immediately queue up his own Miracle Rogue. I'm trying to look at differences immediately, and I see a few. Sinister Strikes instead of the Cold Blood, and it seems like he's going to only run 1 Drake, and that makes him play a little bit quicker. He can sneak into damage in other ways, and I'm kind of curious to see if Sinister Strike's going to pay off, because it allows him to push through the taunts, it allows him to get the damage and enable the combos, but a lot of the times, the complaints from Miracle Rogue players is that Sinister Strike sometimes falls victim to the same reason why you have double conceals or double blade flurries. Like, it's just a little bit excessive spells and you might have dead draws.
Yeah, I mean, it's only good when you're going to win the game. Otherwise, it just basically does nothing. And he runs 2 of them. That's pretty unusual. Also, that Firebat's got to be feeling pretty well about that, because if your opponent can pick any deck and he chooses the exact same deck you were playing, that probably means his other deck is not as good as 50-50 against your deck. So if he can only manage to beat Xixo's Rogue in the mirror, he'll probably just win the series 3-0.
Also important to note, I think Game 2 is about to begin, so let's find out how Xixo responds immediately. Can he out-Miracle the Miracle player? And when the meta game does revolve around bans, Miracle is one of the best decks still, because it keeps a lot of slow decks accountable. Now, the mirror can often come down to just the race damage, but I think it really does depend on how some of the draws pan out for both these players and how they recognize win conditions quicker. and being able to turn it on. Like, for example, Van Cleef is in the hand of Firebat. That might be the only way you can close out this game. And Firebat might realistically have to all in at a certain point on this card.
Yeah. Interesting he kept Azure Drake.
Oh, I love Azure Drake in the mirror. It's so good. Because on turn 5, if you play Gadget Stand, you pretty much draw maybe 1 or 2 cards. Maybe 3 cards at most if you're really lucky and have the combination. But then Azure Drake kind of gets the job done, puts a 4/4 and draws a card anyways. Not to mention the spell power's a threat. Your opponent's gonna have to remove it. And then the following turn you might have something like Gadget Stand anyways. It's like a really good filler on a turn where you're not often very comfortable just dropping the Gadget Stand Auctioneer.
Yeah, no, it's certainly a very good card to play in turn 5. I just wonder what it says about, how they think this matchup goes. I think it's clear from the way both players are playing that they don't think having an early advantage is that relevant. Because Xixo could have just coined an S6-7 agent, for example, he chose not to. Mm-hmm. So he thinks that coin, that playing for more of a late game, or at least medium late game, is more important than getting an early board advantage, which makes sense and would make keeping Azure Drake consistent with the whole way of thinking.
Yeah, I think a lot has to do with how in tune you are with the current metagame. By the way, big Van Cleef coming up for Firebat.
Yeah.
It does depend on things of that you're just trying to calculate what your opponent has. Is it a metagame where double Sap's relevant, where double Farseer is relevant? And then that kind of calculates with, do you want to be slightly more aggressive? Because there are players who do exactly what you said. They coin SI7 to the face, and they play aggressive and try to get into every point of damage. But then if they're running Farseers, that damage could be kind of negligible.
He drew the Sap. That's pretty huge.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, not only Farseer, but if your opponent just plays Deadly Poison, you basically wasted your coin.
Well, speaking of wasting cards,
yeah,
Firebat just lost his Shadow Step, but he still has a turn 5 play, and even if that was poor, he still kind of rebounds. And now Azure Drake evens up the card count, puts a 4/4 on the board, and he still has ways he can follow up with his Van Cleef.
Yeah, for sure. People often think you sap a Van Cleef is like you got rid of it, but it could just come down as a 6/6 2 turns later. It's not like it was killed.
Right.
Okay, so that's a pretty huge turn for Xixo, I think, because he got rid of his opponent's guy and put him in play. But it's just going to dash to the Deadly Poison here. But that's generally what I think you want to do.
Well, he has Conceal as a much better play on the Gadget Stand Auctioneer rather than play the removal game.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't have any indication that he's going to lose his Gadget Stand. Oh, he draws Shiv so he can keep the draws going.
Yeah, he can. Luckily for Xixo, he has low tab, so he can stop that next turn. But this is probably the reason why he's just doing all of those things on his own turn. I feel like without NAXXRAMAS, if low tab wasn't a card, he would just pass the turn here. He wouldn't use perhaps Shiv, because there's no benefit to doing it now, but he's doing it to play around low tab, so that even if Xixo has low tab, he will have gotten some value out of those cards already.
Excellent observation. I think that's exactly the case. Not to mention that your following turn most likely involves playing some of the 3-drops. So you're just kind of insistent on making sure they get the value now. And now we see that Xixo's kind of has a healthy board. He's starting to rack in some damage, by the way, too. He's got Sinister Strike and Eviscerate. If he just pairs together Leroy, we could be looking at a way for Xixo to kill in the next 2 turns.
Yeah, is he just going to gem Sinister Strike there? Use his mana a little bit more? Yeah, probably not.
I think you just count mana. If you draw Leroy next turn, can you use Eviscerate and Sinister Strike? And I think the answer is yes if you coin. That gives you the extra mana because you can also Blade Flurry as well. So he's just calculating his damage, just in case. But it seems like it won't matter because now Firebat's killed off Lotheb, so his damage has been limited, and he's been healing up a little bit as well.
Azure Drake. Yeah, pretty good card here. You were right.
That is, if he gets another way to Blade Flurry and get value, that's actually insanely powerful here.
It is, yeah. Luckily he has that coin, so he could just Blade Flurry everything for 4. And that would put him in a very good position at 29 life with 2 minions in play, and his opponent, will have taken 7. That's pretty good for him.
Excellent. It's still a little empty because look at how many weak and fragile cards he'll have left. He has Eviscerate and Sinister Strike and Preparation.
Yeah, that is
he's
true.
He's going to be left at Tap Decking Leroy, but still, I think it's a good deal here.
And his opponent does have ways to clear the board. Like, he has Fan of Knives with Palnos, and if he draws Blade Flurry, he has 2 Deadly Poisons to go with that. So, we could definitely see a sort of comeback here, even if the board is cleared.
I mean, he does have an alternative of weaponing up and using the Deadly Poison and playing a little bit slower. But I'm of the train of where it's like you try to be aggressive in this matchup. You try to cash in value, get the spell power in while you can, and put the onus on your opponent to be able to clear here.
Yeah, interesting that he chose to use Preparation and not Coin, because that would allow him to also play Sinister Strike, which will hit for 1 more damage now than it will likely hit next turn. So pretty interesting play here. Also, the Coin, well, he'll get to 8 mana anyway, and yeah, it doesn't really matter if he draws Leroy.
Okay, Firebat doesn't have Blade Flurry, but he's got ways to kind of draw and deal with the board.
I mean, he can deal with the... he doesn't really want to sap it of his opponent, guys.
Yeah. Either sap targets are suboptimal.
Yeah.
Sixer's like, is that Eviscerate? No, it's just sap.
Yeah, it's got to be feeling pretty good for Xixo here to get his Drake sapped. Yep. His opponent did drop a 6/6 Enclave.
I mean, it's disappointing because if the Drake didn't get sapped, that's actually lethal right there because he had a 5 damage Eviscerate.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. He would rather it lived.
Oh, he gets Conceal.
Conceal.
Oh man, he has double Eviscerate here off the top, and Xixo's going to close it out with spells only. No Leroy necessary.
Yeah, well, Sinister Strike for you. Maybe a preview of what's going to happen next month already. When Leroy costs 1 more mana.
Could be. Firebat will have to turn to one of his other decks. Whether his Ramp Druid or his Warlock deck, which we didn't see before. And it is going to be Handlock, which has been a strong counter to Miracle Rogue for a long time because of the board pressure it puts out. It's cool that we see a lot of the Handlocks start to rotate Lord Jaraxxus back into the lineup. That was a card for a while, PV, where people felt like it was just too slow. There's just way too much combo and burst potential. But now that NAXXRAMAS has slowed down Hearthstone considerably with cards like Sludge Belcher and Lotheb, maybe Jaraxxus can have a bigger impact.
Yeah, it could definitely have a big impact. And also, I think here, Xixo's Sinister Strikes could actually be very key. Because Miracle Rogue's plan, they just usually drop to a somewhat low life so then they play a bunch of taunts. And, if he can deal, 8 more damage through not attacking a normal Miracle Rogue, that's pretty huge. It has to be something Firebat has to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, and it might come into play here in Game 3. Let's get it started. And, Xixo, I kind of want to just once again cast my lot in this guy's department because he's been part of all 3 tournaments. And it's just be heartbreaking to see him go to drop in the group stages once again, where it's like this guy has yet to have a breakout tournament performance to win something. And a lot of people who've been watching his stream and following his legend runs also want to see him do well here.
Yeah, so just going back to Lord Jaraxxus, how do you think it matches up against Alexstrasza? Because they're kind of the same thing in that they bring your life total to 15, but they occupy the same slot. You never see people running both of them, but sometimes you see Alexstrasza, sometimes you see Jaraxxus, sometimes you see nothing. How do you think they match up against each other?
I personally like Jaraxxus a little bit more because winning with him is slightly more satisfying. But and also because I feel like a lot of times Alexstrasza feels just like an 8 mana or 9 mana giant in a lot of cases. Handlock can whittle your opponent down. And a lot of times the damage done offensively by Alexstrasza is kind of negligible, and then healing yourself up is kind of the same impact anyways. But I do recognize the opportunity you get with Alexstrasza to put your opponent within Leroy range of combos, so I'm not against it, but I personally like Jaraxxus. I think it's just a little bit more flexible.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Here we go.
I haven't actually tried the deck with Jaraxxus. I'll probably have to.
Oh, you must. And if I encourage you to try one, you should do it in a Void Caller deck because it is just awesome. If for some reason the Void Caller dies and you have a 3/15 on the field.
Yeah, that seems pretty interesting. Pretty hard to beat if you manage to taunt it up.
No
Not much
4-mana
going
cost
on this
minion
game.
for Firebat. This is pretty bad to have a lot of passivity against a Miracle Rogue player.
Yeah, though the Miracle Rogue player is also not doing anything. I mean, he's at 22 already from like hero powers and stuff, but
Ooh, chooses to go for Lotheb. Meanwhile, he's got a lot of cheap spells they can combine and make his opponent's life difficult.
he can guarantee, he can play all those 5 spells the turn he plays the Actioneer. So even if he doesn't have Conceal, he guarantees it. Ooh, that was good. Guarantees a bunch of card drawing.
Sure. You get a backstab. You get a backstab. Alright. Viscerate. Or Shiv to draw more cards as well. All
Shiv
is
wants
possible.
to finish it off with the dagger. Yes. Yeah. He can also Shadow Stab back his own Actioneer if he feels like he hasn't drawn enough cards this turn.
Here we go.
Which,
Yeah, but he's got a couple of cards that can cycle through, but that's always one of the big debates that Miracle players kind of struggle with. Firebat picks up the Mountain Giant, though, and now he can kind of answer the Auctioneer as well, so this is starting to kind of shore up here for him.
yeah, I wonder if the Lotheb should have attacked the 5/4 just to prevent Shadow Flame from happening. Because clearly his plan is to next turn eviscerate the 5/4 and then attack with Lotheb, but that leaves him vulnerable to a Shadow Flame, which Firebat does have. It might not play this turn because he wants to play the Giant, but
Does he? I mean, he's hesitating. I feel like putting out a Giant is usually preferable, but is there an alternative play that we're not seeing because the Giant blinded us? I don't think so, but maybe there's something else.
I like Shadow Flame a little bit more, honestly. Oh, yeah, that is good too. He gets to kill, Soulfire the Actioneer and kill the, so he gets to read the board anyway. That is probably better than just playing Shadow Flame here.
Does lose a Shenzhen, which can be kind of painful considering that it's one of your taunters to be able to survive against Leroy Burst. But Handlock's at 17. And there's 2 Eviscerates and a Sinister Strike. So that's 14 damage. Right. Not to mention there's also cards like Blade Flurry in the deck as well. And SI7 can even go to the face. So there's a lot of damage that Xixo has. He has to plan this out. Make sure he can kind of maximize everything. Also on the flip side, his opponent just used Power Overwhelming, so his opponent and Soulfire. So his opponent's burst is also contracted a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Ooh, chooses to go for the more passive controllish play. Probably means he's just trying to win with Leroy here, which is tough against Handlock.
Yeah, I mean, as much as it's just a dream to go off with spells, and if you had infinite mana, you could lethal him. The realistic point is that he might have Faceless, he might have more ways to follow us up, and you would be sitting at 20 health, or lower than 20 health here, and then just be at a impossible wall to kill through. So Xixo just goes for removal. It's the safer play, and I don't blame him for it whatsoever.
But how are you gonna win now?
The same way you always win every night, Pinky. Try and use Leroy and Shadow Step.
Yeah, I guess he does still have 2 saps in his deck. I think he has 2. I mean, there's one.
Well, see what you pick up with Azure Drake. You even have a little bit of spell power to AoE.
Yeah, he might be holding that for a turn where he can play, Fin of Knives and Sinister Strike, but feels like it's just better to use it now.
Oh, Alright, well, still no possibility to pick up something like Blade Flurry, but at least now, Sludge Belcher has been appropriately disposed of. Tossed in the dumpster. Recycled, so that way he's not any more toxic pollution.
Yeah, and importantly, he still keeps his sap. So, you know, if he does draw a Leroy.
Firebat still has Lotheb, which the timing of Lotheb might be critical in how he kind of fights back against potential lethal. Leroy looks like it's gonna go for a Shadow Flame play and try to clear his opponent's board. But still, it's like a situation where if Xixo pairs together the right cards, he could still win this.
Yeah, I mean, he would have won if he had drawn Leroy. He can Leroy Shadow Step, Sap, Sinister Strike, that's 15.
Right. I mean, at this stage, Firebat's kind of worried about how he's going to win.
Yeah, I mean, he probably... Is he Hellfire Mortal Coil Giant here? Nope. Okay.
Alright, well, he's going to do what he can to start fighting back for board position.
At the expense of a lot of life. But yeah. I mean, he knows next turn he can play, you know, assuming Xixo hits him for a lot, he can just play Molten Giant, copy Molten Giant, and play some Fury Protect. Well, get 3 big taunt guys.
Hey.
By playing Molten Giant, some Fury, and then copying the taunt Molten Giant.
Oh my. Xixo saying it's Leroy or bust still.
Yeah. Doesn't give him the chance to, you know, play 2 taunted Giants here. By leaving he had a higher life total. Did draw Owl to shrink the Van Cliff, but it was not that big to begin with.
Yeah, it's basically deal 2 damage. Not really that effective. So, are you gonna try to go for more of the assumption your opponent doesn't have Leroy by now, and then you can play like Twilight Drake back again, and then the Siphon Soul, or do you feel like there's an onus to pressure with something like Molten Giant and Taunt, and then feel like you just leave it up to whether or not your opponent has second sap?
I think I like the Siphon Soul play here. Because even if your opponent has Leroy, he has to have 2 Shadow Stabs to kill you.
Okay, Drake first, so you get the extra health.
Yeah. It does make it a little bit harder to cast your Molten Giant, but at the same time, you know, that's because you're at a high life total, so definitely worth it.
Alright, well, it might be time to cycle out this Blood Mage for Xixo.
Yeah.
Try to draw Leroy. It's basically come down to this, where he's at an impasse.
Conceal the Blood Mage.
Oh, man. Do you attack into your opponent with Deadly Poison? Do you leave it up in case you have Blade Flurry? These are all like these small micro decisions where it's like kind of impossible to always be 100% sure, but it does come down to experience and as well as playing the percentages on how many cards are left in your deck.
Yeah, but now Firebat will have access to 2 taunt minions, and he only has 1 sap left in his deck.
Ah, you're right.
So even if he does draw Leroy, that won't be enough.
So many possibilities.
It does draw large Raxes, but I don't think they'll be making an appearance.
Shields up.
I mean, maybe if Xixo tries to YOLO, but I don't know if that's going to be the case. SI7 agent is not it. And Xixo might have to trade in. He sees a Molten Giant, so he's inclined to play Sinister Strike a little bit quicker, because it's not like I mean, he probably doesn't have a second Molten Giant.
Yeah, and even if he does, you know, it's turn 10. How likely is that to matter?
Blade Flurry? Hold on. Ah, he needed that spell power, though, from...
Yeah, why is
that
the Sinister
spell
Strike
power.
still blinking?
Ah, it's just, you know, Hearthstone teasing you, saying, look what you could have had.
Casca's toast.
Okay, that was good. That was a very good turn. As you know, as far as things go, he managed to
good
still
as
live
good
himself.
can get. Soulfire off the top though is lethal for Firebat, and he knows this. So there's a way for him to kind of get the damage necessary.
Okay, that's probably
Wow.
game. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that is devastating. Xixo has no way from this point on, I think. But he has Gadget and Auctioneer. Only a few cards remaining in his deck. I can't think of any other threats though.
No,
that
it
would
won't be
actually
enough.
seriously do anything.
Almost out of cards.
But I like how he played this game.
Yeah.
You know, he gave himself the best chance to win when the game seemed overwhelmingly against him.
Well, when Leroy is in the last 2 or 3 cards of your deck, this is kind of what happens if you make your game plan oriented around him as a finisher. Firebat will go up 2-1, and Xixo will have to go to his Ramp Druid, featuring Kel'Thuzad as a cameo.
Yeah.
And we'll see if whether or not he can use his control deck to outpace that of the Handlock. Now, whoa! Let's talk a little bit about some of the card choices here. Xixo has double Nourish.
Yeah, that's pretty different. He also has a big game hunter as well, which is going to be very, very good against his Handlock opponent. He does not have Black Knight, which surprises me. I think he chose it to go for 2 Sunwalkers instead of 1 and a Black Knight, which would have been good in this matchup. But yeah, both decks somewhat similar in that they want to just play undercosted huge minions.
Yeah, and he's got Farseers instead of Harvest Golems, and I think they just bring a lot of utility with a lot of the bigger health minions. It gives you the ability to heal up, not only yourself, of course, but your important minions as well. It's flexible, and let's see if Xixo is able to use these cards to his benefit. And in the late game situations, Nourish are amazing, but you only can dream to get the Wild Growth Nourish start. That's one of the best ways for the Druid to get things going. Game 4 begins, and let's see what these guys have. Xixo pushes everything other than BGH. He knows it's Handlock, so that's a great keep already, but probably wants to look for something like Wild Growth to also accompany that.
Yeah, and here I think the early game from the Druid deck is probably gonna decide how this game is gonna be played, because the Handlock does everything the same every single time, and Druid has some very explosive draws with Innervate, Wild Growth, and even Nourish. So he will be dictating the pace of this game. And I think, if the game goes for very long without the Druid deck getting an advantage, Handlock's gotta be favored because the hero power, hero power is just so good. And you have Siphon Soul, which is hard removal that our deck doesn't have. And your guys are a little bit bigger. 8/8s are a little bit bigger than 4/5s and stuff. But yeah, the match could definitely go either way. Since both decks kind of do similar things.
Every single Magic player that I ever talked to always sits in disbelief when I describe to them the first time the Warlock hero power in Hearthstone. They're like, "Are you serious?" They're like, "What? You just pay?" Because I forgot the name of the card equivalent in Magic. As BGH, by the way, shuts down this Mountain Giant as expected.
Yeah, there's Greed. There's a card you take.
Greed. That's right. You pay 2 life and draw a card.
Yeah, it's a card that costs 4 to play. And Warlock already starts with that in play. So, yeah, the hero power is definitely very good, and this deck is constructed very well around the hero power. But there's one of those relatively fast starts from Xixo. He had plays on turn 3 and 4, and then played an Innervate 5/5. So Firebat is with his back on the wall here.
And now you just always mull over whether or not you should play around any kind of AoE that your opponent has, whether it's something like Hellfire. Not really Shadow Flame in this scenario because the trades would be pretty poor, but still, you have to kind of be careful about it. Xixo chooses to hold back, which turns out might still be punishing because Firebat can go for the clear here.
Yeah, which he probably will. I mean, it's best play by far. He was probably thinking whether he wanted to play Ancient Watcher or use Hero Power this turn. Chooses to go for Ancient Watcher. Feels like he doesn't need more cards and just wants to add something that he can Shadow Flame away to the board without using more mana. But I think if I was with a drawn card, I'm very greedy.
I mean, it's just play style. It comes down to you have flexibility with Iron Beak Owl and silencing it. Most likely, it seems like Firebat's going to answer this threat with Siphon Soul for sure.
Yeah, it's not going to get much better than, a 5/10. He does have other ways to deal with it. He could Owl it and then Power Overwhelming to 1/2 and attack into it. That would kill it. He could also Faceless Manipulator it, get his own 5/10, and then taunt his guy attack and Soulfire. This might be the best play.
Huh.
So he does have the whole combo in hand. He has Leroy, Faceless, and Power Overwhelming, and Soulfire, so he might not want to part with those cards.
Yeah, that's 20 damage already, or 24, excuse me.
Yeah.
That might be the countdown for when Firebat can win this game and even up his score in the series. Now, Xixo, on the meanwhile, this Druid deck, if you play the traditional mid-range, it struggled against Handlock because it doesn't have many ways to deal with a mass board clear. And so you're kind of dependent on these single target killers like Black Knight and BGH. After all, your premium removal spells like Swipe can only take out half a giant. So Xixo needs to rely on the board. But there's cards like that can always be the X factor. Cards like Faceless Manipulator, cards like Ragnaros, which always seems to turn to die. It depends on who's controlling it. And, I really kind of want to say that Firebat's favored, but I'm always kind of saying that conditionally because I feel like the Druid can do a lot of cool stuff too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, his hand, he does have Ragnaros and Faceless Manipulator, so he's going to put up a fight in the late game at least. Unlike some other versions of Druid that if you get outclassed by big minions, you just lose. This one he actually has ways to win.
All right. Well.
Ooh, healing the 1/2. That's pretty interesting because now it forces his opponent to attack it with a 5/5 instead of just using his hero power.
Right. And then he baits out maybe Keeper of the Grove for 2 damage or, Wrath instead or something else that can be taken away from his future Twilight Drakes or future other cards that he doesn't want to have those removal spells or minions on.
It could clear the board with 2 swipes here.
All right, well, let's just turn that into a reality. Why not?
Yeah. Probably attack face here. No, chooses to attack the minion. Okay.
He does not want to enable Molten Giants. Ooh, Firebat gets another kind of giant. Doesn't really need to have Molten to activate this.
Yeah. And just one more mana and he wins the game.
I think Firebat's also keeping a count of what if his opponent has combo, but I don't think you can. Do you Soulfire because you're afraid of combo? You have a lot to lose. Oh,
yeah,
he taps into Lotheb, which Lotheb would have been the better thing. Like if he tapped first, he could have played Lotheb to deny the combo. Oh man, that's
yeah. He changed his mind. I mean, he was gonna go for. Yeah, he could have won this game. So maybe Xixo would have just played Farseer instead. Oh, okay.
Well,
so
let's see, Leroy.
Yeah,
and
now
Faceless is only 20 damage. Oh gosh. All right. Now, how does Xixo deal with this? Does he have to use Faceless on his own, on his opponent's Ragnaros, and then rely on it?
Yeah, he can't even taunt it up because of the Lotheb.
Oh, but he got Sludge Belcher. That's an important card too. Just needs to hit the Ragnaros, or maybe the other minion too. Just hit something, not the face. Oh, and he snipes the other Rag. This is some crucial moments. Rag once again coming down to these handlock control wars.
Yeah, and now that is looking pretty good for Xixo. Yeah, for Firebat, unfortunately, that obviously he knows he should hero power before playing his spells, but he wasn't going to hero power. He just changed his mind after he played the giant, which might just cost him the game, unfortunately.
Oh man.
Yeah, I mean, he's not out of it yet. You know, he's still going to play a bunch of minions, and you hope Ragnaros doesn't hit something great. But, you know, does he hero power now and risk immediately dying? Oh, guess not. He's going to gain 3. Yeah, if you're going to gain 3, you gotta hero power here.
Yeah, this is just a tricky situation where, like, he could have set himself up. Could have been in a situation where he'd been lethal. But now it's kind of just flipped and reversed. And Firebat gave up some of his best tools in the late game as the handlock. And he's still at the mercy of Ragnaros. Now back over to Xixo. Is there a way for him to to guarantee himself to be able to go for like a 50-50 win here? I don't think so.
I think safest play here would probably be Sunwalker or Seer Mark. It would be the play that's probably less likely to get him dead, but I don't think he needs to do all of that. And yeah, just, you know, killing that and Mark is
all right. Well,
pretty good.
He's still vulnerable to Molten Giant Shadow Flame. And this is still in the back of his mind. Meanwhile, Ragnaros will still do what he pleases, and he hits the Sludge Belcher. Oh, and oh my god, Firebat picks up a Molten Giant. That allows him to go for a Shadow Flame play.
Yeah, and, you know, there's Leroy tokens. Oh, he wants to keep the Molten Giant. He's just going to attack his opponent's creatures.
Fair enough. Also works as well. Still a little scary against combo, but I guess at this stage you just want to go for the win here. You keep the Molten Giant as opposed to having just a 1/2 token and a 3/3. I can get behind that.
Well, but you also got a Leroy. You lost to Leroy.
That's true.
And his opponent would be a 6 last life. So you know, I can see marriage to both plays. Could also have used his hero power to draw an extra card and make the giant cost 0 since he had 1 left mana. But doesn't want to go, you know, too far below.
Wow, tough moments for Firebat. He can kill off this Farseer and pop the bubble, make the giant live, but
he has to do
still
that,
slim pickings.
I think I would be tempted to hero power here.
Yeah.
You know, at this point, you're not worried about dying to burst, especially since your opponent has already played 2 swipes. I think you should just try to draw, you know, better cards. He's a 7 so now.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. There's not a lot of direct damage that Firebat has to worry about. It's still about the combo. Like, do you have... Oh my god, second Molten Giant. Oh wow. Well, that's a card that's kind of useless here. You're just worried about Force of Nature and Savage Roar, but you're at such low health, I think it's kind of inconsequential. Either way, I mean, it's coming down to the point where Xixo just has to draw 1 more point of damage here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure this turn he wished he had hero power last turn. If he could do it twice this turn, he would have. Yeah, I mean, you died to Force of Nature anyway here. Not even the combo, just Force of Nature.
You're Xixo, do you feel like you have to set up the biggest wall you can? Or do you play Sylvanas on the chance that you know, your opponent can't have to burst through?
If you play Sylvanas, you'll be at 3rd. Well, 12. Yeah, you can play... I think Sylvanas is fine.
Yeah, that's still 2 taunts he has to push through. It's not easy.
Okay. And Drake doesn't even kill a taunter if it comes to that.
Right. Firebat picks up Soulfire. That allows him to push through 1 taunt.
Yeah, I mean, he can kill both taunts, but then his opponent is going to get a Sylvanas, and he'll have no cards. His opponent still has 2 cards left.
Well, his opponent has actually lethal at this stage. You just have to actually kill off as much as you can.
Yeah, he has to hero power here.
Oh, man! That stinks. Firebat won't be able to win this game. And Draxus is 1 mana off from being able to be played and heal back up to 15.
Yeah, this good trend. Yeah, so close.
And if there's one statement that kind of describes Firebat's situation, it's definitely not enough mana here. The series is tied up, and we're going to Game 5. Xixo will face against Firebat's Hunter deck, I believe. Oh no, Hunter was banned. That's right, Druid deck. And Druid ramp will be the choice for Firebat, and we're going to have kind of a mirror match, but there are some card differentials between these two players.
Yeah, we can see that Xixo actually doesn't even run the combo. So, like, unlike, most versions have 1 of each piece, but Xixo has 0.
Yeah, and that's because, and he's able to fit in a lot of quality minions too. Just look at his list. I mean, he has Nourish, and he has the normal list of threats that you've come to expect, and a little more juice. He's got Kel'Thuzad, which can give a lot of his cards, like Sunwalker, like Sylvanas, insane value. And I mean, he's well tooled for the late game. And in these Druid mirrors, in terms of how they stack up class versus class, usually the slower one has the upper advantage. And I feel like with this in mind, Xixo might be the one who can take this, because he's also got Faceless Manipulator, a card that's really good in the mirrors. But look for cards like Black Knight and BGH to still be very swingy. And Firebat, of course, still has burst potential in his deck. Game 5 is about to begin. Can Firebat win this series and climb back into the group, or is he going to go down 0-2 and Xixo gets his first and much needed win? All right, wild growth for Firebat off the bat. Important.
Zombie Chow.
Zombie Chow. Okay. Xixo has Nourish and Innervate. Oh my goodness, he's got Nourish and double Innervate.
Is that going to be a turn 1 Nourish?
You're
just thinking
top
about
decking,
it.
Then. You're just top decking and wrecking. But I say go for it.
Yeah, you can even attack too.
Oh, absolutely. Oh man. Now Firebat's just like, well, I guess Wild Growth's a lot weaker in this position.
But at the same time, his opponent has 1 card in hand. So, it's not very threatening here. He's going to have 4 mana, but what's he going to do next turn? Just hero power again, the same thing he would do with 2 mana. And probably the same for, many other turns.
Well, you can Wrath and cycle for 1. Well, this is an interesting message. Six was like, well, what do I go from here? I guess the good news is that whatever he draws in the next couple of turns, most likely he can play. And then now Firebat's making up some of that lost ground.
Yeah, he does have his own Innervate in coin, so...
Wow.
Ooh, that was perfect. But Firebat's
gonna top deck Black Knight.
That would be great. He can play the Ancient now. Or he could just cycle his rep also.
Okay. And, Firebat's still kind of comfortable. Look at his hand. And Innervate allows him to smoothen out his curves so beautifully. Turn 5 is an Ancient. Turn 6 is Sunwalker. Turn 7 is an Ancient. And 6 is going to be drawing 1 card a turn to deal with this.
But I feel like, at this point, choosing to go for the Wrath is choosing to place more value in cards than maybe you need to. Because your opponent is already so low on cards that, you don't need more things. The way you can lose here is if your opponent starts top decking minions and you just fall too far behind on board. And Firebat's last turn didn't actually, improve his board position much. I feel like playing a minion would have been better. You don't get immediate value from the Wrath, but you just suicide the Zombie Child to get rid of the Divine Shield. And at this point, tempo is more important than cards.
Well, here's a tempo play for you. A 5/10 on turn 5.
So yeah, he's definitely still in a great position. It's close.
Oh, Xixo just used his Keeper the Grove effect too. And this is where I think you bring up really valid points to his turn 1 play, where now it's just like, he just doesn't have anything. Now, of course, Xixo had no intel on what kind of deck Firebat had. Maybe his opponent was playing something like the Fast Token Druid, and he needed to get aggressive with his mana ramp so that way he can answer threats. But now he's kind of made a misread of Judgment, and look at Firebat's hand. He's got double Ancient of Lords. This is like absolutely dominant from one player over the other.
Yeah, which is weird. Over such similar decks, we have such different draws. But yeah, I mean, there are 4/7 mana cards in each deck, and one player drew 0, the other drew all 4. So definitely not looking good.
Okay, well,
Yeah, he's gonna have to go through so many hoops just to get rid of that card. And little does he know that his opponent is gonna play, other similar cards for the next 3 turns.
well, Firebat feels really confident, and you know what? I mean, why not just play another Ancient? I guess he's hoping for no Black Knight. Oh, well, Xixo gets a good response to that.
Yeah, still lives a 5/5 there. Low tab is not going to do much here, just another 5/5 in a sea of 5/5s.
Well, this has become definitely one comical game, as Xixo thought he had a great start, but by no means has it been able to pay off for him whatsoever. He's staring down an insanely powerful board. The fact is, he's going to have to keep trading unfavorably, and his opponent's going to continue to climb up in the card count.
Yeah. And the problem with Xixo's start was not that it was bad, but it was that his opponent also had a pretty good start. And at that point, you were kind of all in on a plan that didn't work, whereas your opponent, matched your start and still had more things.
Oh, man.
Yeah, this is not pretty.
No.
0
You have
cards
children
again.
around you, cover your eyes. This is just brutal.
I mean, he's fighting, he's killing minions every turn, but at some point he's gonna draw a card that doesn't do anything, and then it'll be over.
Yeah, this is the scene from 300 where you knew Leonidas and his men are gonna die, and they just barely keep holding off, and they cut away from the scene as soon as you know they're about to lose. And that's gonna be the moment the Xixo concedes.
So should we just cut away?
Oh gosh, cut back to the ban screen because well, he's got Sylvanas, but now interestingly enough, I think Savage Roar might allow Firebat to end this game here.
Yeah.
Oh, or does Swipe allow him? No, it doesn't matter. He's still able to kind of answer Key for the Grove immediately on the Sylvanas, play a big taunter. And Xixo, you can see the disappointment on his face with how the dream hand of using Nourish and being able to have Nourish as one of these trump cards to try and win against Druid if it's slower, but he took the gamble and it didn't pay off, and Firebat will be taking the series and move up to 1-1 here.
Alright, yeah. That's unfortunately for Xixo, but he's still in. So at this point, anyone could make it out of that group.
Alright, so now Xixo is going to be on a mission. He says, if I can beat Fake, then the group blows wide open, like you mentioned, because then all of a sudden everybody's 1-1. But in fact, I was kind of misspeaking a little bit earlier. Our next series looks to be Kolento versus Xixo, so he's gonna have to go up against Kolento and potentially put him on an advance or elimination. So a very important series for Xixo. It'll be or for Kolento, it'll be the last of the day for him, and this is an opportunity for Xixo to potentially swing the future of how Group A shapes up.
Yeah, definitely. Should be an interesting game.
All right, cool. So guys, before we go to break, I want to remind you guys about your chance to win the Zeus mini PC you see in the bottom right on the overlay. Go to vgvn.onenationsagamer.com to find out more information, or type giveaway in the chat. Go to the bottom of the Twitch channel and find out more about how to win. Also, YouTube VODs are being uploaded by One Nation of Gamers Productions, youtube.com/One Nation of Gamers. Type in YouTube in the chat to find out more info. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, more action for VGVN number 3. See you soon.